Good morning. I've got our auto man, Brian Bowersock, with me this morning, and we're talking timing belts.
Timing belts.
And I'm being told by you, this is what you see here in the front, the missing teeth, you do not want that to happen to yours.
Not a good scenario whatsoever.
So what causes that?
Well, that actually is caused by time and mileage. It was worn out, and somebody didn't replace it when it was recommended.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh is
Which
right.
means what to the car?
Well, actually, that can mean that versus the price of that timing belt, the repairs to the car can triple. Because when you actually break a timing belt, we have engines that are called interference, which we have our nice little valves here on the table. And what happens then is when the cam and the crank come out of time, the valves hit the piston and the car stops running. When that happens, the whole motor's got to be disassembled to fix it.
That sounds complicated, but I got out of that. You do not want it to happen.
You do not want it to happen. So that's why we're talking about that this morning. Absolutely great point. Perfect. So, and we're also talking about, along with timing belts, all manufacturers have a recommended mileage interval or time to replace them, okay? Most manufacturers are 5 to 7 years in time, or 90 to 105,000 miles, and each manufacturer varies, so you need to look it up for your specific vehicle, make and model. But that being said, it is very imperative that you replace them about the time it's needed so that that does not happen. And the reason we're talking about that is there's a lot of other items that go along with the timing belt, because nowadays, as you can see here on our demonstration, we have a water pump, we have idlers, and hydraulic tensioners that are all part of this, along with seals behind the cam and crank that we have laid out here on the table. All these things need to be replaced and the seals inspected when you do a timing belt. If you go in and just do one component and another component fails, it can damage the timing belt and you can end up in the same scenario. Not to mention the fact, what we often see is people get quoted to do a timing belt without a water pump. They have it done. 6 months later, the water pump's leaking that's run by the timing belt. Guess what that means?
A new timing belt.
Well, not the timing belt necessarily, but the labor that you already paid all that money, you have to go back in and replace the pump. And the pump's not warranted because it wasn't replaced initially. So what we often educate folks about is doing the job entirely properly. Replace all the parts behind there, get it done, you're good for another 100,000 miles or so, whatever the manufacturer recommends, and it saves you money in the long run.
So what can we do to make sure that our timing belts, you know, we can get the most use out of it, that it's going to last as long as we can get?
Well, as long as the things that are detrimental to a timing belt are things such as bearing failures and things like that. So replacing these components with the timing belt, or oil leaks. So if you start to get an oil leak or something like that, you want to prevent it from leaking on the timing belt. They're made out of nitrile, which oil tends to expand and cause them to fail early. So if something like that's going on, get it taken care of. But other than that, there's no real preventive maintenance for the timing belt except for to replace it when the manufacturer recommends.
Real quick, we're almost out of time. What is the out-of-pocket expense for a new timing belt, roughly?
Boy, does that vary. You can go from a simple 4-cylinder, which could be $300–400, to a major V6 repair. Replacing the timing belt could be $1,200–1,500, depending on the vehicle. So yeah, it's quite a variance, and it depends on the car. But
it's a must-have.
It's a must-have. So it's much cheaper to do before there's a problem.